Okay, so welcome to Truvon Talks with Rachel and Linda and our awesome guest, Christie Eastman from Cabell, Huntington Pastoral Care. We appreciate you being here, Christie. So tell us a little more about you and your practice and your position at Cabell.
Yeah, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me. Yeah, I am Christie Eastman, and I've been married almost 30 years. I'm coming up on my 30-year anniversary in October.
Wow.
I have 2 adult children and 1 wonderful and just great kids, young men that are my children, but no longer children, and a wonderful daughter-in-law now too. And have lived in the Huntington area for 19 years, and am the manager of the counseling center here at Cabell Huntington Hospital, and have been with the hospital, since 2004, started here as a contract counselor and then was hired full-time in 2009. I'm a licensed professional counselor, was licensed in 2007, and am an EFT, emotionally focused therapy, certified therapist and supervisor in the model. I've been using EFT since 2010, was certified in 2013 and became a supervisor in 2015 through the International Center for Excellence in Emotionally Focused Couple Therapy, or Emotionally Focused Therapy, which has a couples wing, family wing, and an individual wing as well. So that's really my therapeutic home, and I love it. It is. I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, we are too. We love EFT as well. Christie, what inspired you to become a counselor?
I think, as it is true for many of us, it's just kind of an innate thing on the inside of me. You know, I've always loved talking to people, and I'm not great at chit chat. I'm much better at just kind of getting to the heart of things and going deep in conversation. So it's almost like, in some ways, I can't believe I get paid to do the thing that I love the most in life, which is to be with people in really real places and walking with them in the just inevitable struggles of life, and bearing witness to the resiliency of the human spirit and watching them with great courage overcome things that are just really hard. And it's such an inspiration to my life. I learn more from my clients than I could ever say.
Yeah, we really do, don't we? Especially with EFT, you really just create such a strong bond.
Yes, you really do.
Yeah, that's so important, just to have that connection with your client and to be present. Christie, and I just want to share that Christie inspired me to engage in emotionally, excuse me, focused therapy. And my heart just, I have a soft spot, warm spot for Christie, in that she introduced me to the model. And had she not done that, I don't know if I would have stayed in the field. So, I just want to give her my gratitude, and I'm very grateful for the model and what you taught me, Christie. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's such a great pleasure. You know, my dream from the very beginning, really, of learning this model starting in 2010 has been to share it with other clinicians, because it's so transformative to us as human beings, as clinicians, and to our practice. And it's so life-changing for our clients, and it just resonates. And so, Linda, I'm just thrilled for what you're doing with the model, and how you're also now reaching out and, working toward getting the model out more and more, not just as a clinician, but as a supervisor and someone who wants to also propagate the model in the area. It's great to have you as a colleague in this wonderful endeavor.
Aw, we'll cry already. Gonna cry already.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. So were there any, I've got our questions I'm looking down there at, were there life experiences that kind of shaped the way you counsel clients? I know that you shared that you had been on a mission field at one time, and I wondered if any of these life experiences impacted how you interact and work with clients.
I'm sure, I can't imagine that any of my life experiences haven't been a part of how I work with clients. As you know, as EFT therapists, a big part of who we are as therapists is who we are as people in our own journeys and our own nervous system, and how it's kind of shaped by the experiences that we have. So, growing up, my dad struggled very badly with anxiety and depression and went through a suicidal period as well. I was in my teens. And so I'm sure that was, especially at that developmental stage, deeply impactful. And he had a counselor that he went to who he said over and over saved his life. That really impacted me. And then, of course, just talking to people, people being willing to take the risk to share the difficult parts of their journeys with me, that deeply influenced me. And, people saying that was helpful, just to have someone that they could trust to talk to. And then on the mission field, yeah, my husband and I were in East Africa and Bangladesh for a decade. We were gone the whole 90s. and just, experiencing a different type of suffering in people, but the incredible resiliency of the human spirit against, really incredible, just even struggles for survival. And disasters and, tribal warfare and just, so much stuff, just different stuff, that people have to deal with. But that deeply impacted me. I actually came to a saving faith in Jesus Christ during that time. And it's really through the witness of East African people that were believers. And of course, that's just all really impactful to me. But it was also a great time of personal struggle. It's very difficult experiences just personally that I went through, and my husband and I went through. And our marriage was really tough in the first decade, really, I'd say. And maybe even beyond. And he's a minister. And so we both really openly share how difficult marriage was for us. And so having struggled myself in, marriage has, it's just easy to be real with people. And, I don't see myself as someone that somehow has it right. We're all in this together. And like I said, I'm almost at 30 years married to the same man, and it just gets better and better every year. And it's not always easy still, for either of us, but it just gets more and more beautiful.
Oh, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us, Christie. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's those life experiences that kind of help us to be empathetic and relate, as humans, and that universal experience of pain, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
So how did you get introduced to emotionally focused therapy? Where did you learn about it?
Yeah, it's a really neat story. It was in 2009 or 2010. And at the time, the counseling center was part of the pastoral care department, and the director of pastoral care was my direct supervisor. And he had come across something about EFT and learned about Sue Johnson. And I was doing a lot of couples work at the time, and so was he. And he said, I think you'd be interested in this. And I bought this DVD, and here it is. And if you want to watch it, see what you think. And it was an externship in emotionally focused therapy with Sue Johnson. It was a recording, obviously, but I spent a year just going through that DVD. It was like, I don't know, 20 hours or something. And I almost wrote the entire DVD verbatim by hand because I could not believe how true it was in my spirit and in my mind and in my experience. It was an absolutely transformative year. So that's how I got introduced. Just, my supervisor said, hey, I think this will resonate with you. And my goodness, he had no idea.
Oh, how cool. Yeah.
That's so cool. I didn't know you sat and wrote the whole thing down. That's probably what I needed to do when I was watching Sue on her tapes. I should have sat there and wrote down what she was saying. That's wow. You're right. Once you get started, the experience is so real. It's like, oh my goodness, that's what people do.
Yes.
Their interactions, not just with their spouse, but with their friends, with their mom, with their dad, and
yeah.
Attachment stuff. That was barely touched on in school.
Right.
And attachment, Christy, like attachment to your closest bonds, isn't that how you feel on the inside? Like whether you're feeling anxious or sad, is how close you feel to someone that's your person? Do you believe that to be true, whether you feel anxious or depressed?
Well, it certainly has a huge impact. If you think of our hierarchy of needs, fundamentally, we need to know that we're safe, right? And all of modern neuroscience around attachment points to the fact, it's just a fact, that we are wired for connection. We are not individual creatures. We are not just social creatures like some of the animals. We are creatures who depend on at least one secure, really safe, secure bond in the world for our nervous system to be able to cope well with the dangers of this world. This world is not, always safe. And if you live long enough, or even if you've just lived a little while, life is going to throw some stuff at you. And if you don't have a secure base, a safe haven, a place to pull your ship in off of the stormy seas where the sheets are ironed and turned back and the pillow is fluffed and you just can lay your head down and know that you're okay because somebody is there to love you and to be in this life with you and to have your back, our nervous systems are not going to be able to relax. And, it's going to affect us at that neurological level. And our bodies are going to stay in a heightened state of kind of a chronic stress, which sets us up for anxiety and depression and a lot of other stuff, a lot of health problems as well.
That is so true.
That was so well stated, Christy. Yeah, you've got to have a secure bond. Someone, like if you play the game of tag, you have a secure base.
Yes.
No one can get you.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard someone say that before, and I'm like, that's what you need, a secure base. I think it's my turn, Miss Rachel, is it?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I think we're on number 5. So, compared to other therapies, and what makes attachment therapy more unique? I mean, I know you kind of answered that already, but what are some benefits to people engaging in an EFT model versus, say, cognitive therapy?
Yeah, cognitive therapy or cognitive behavioral, that's what kind of most people come out of graduate school in psychology or clinical social work or, clinical psychology or counseling, kind of having more of a cognitive behavioral kind of approach, and which is fine. Cognitive behavioral and cognitive therapies are what we call top down. So they really work with the thoughts of people, and the idea is if you change the way you think about something, it's going to change the way you feel about something, and then it's going to make it possible for you to behave differently in the world, and things are going to go better for you. Which is, really true, and that can happen a lot. And cognitive therapies have a lot of benefit for a lot of people. Problem is that when we are distressed at the level of our nervous system, again, safety is the priority of the human creature, of all creatures. We all share a part of the brain, with all creatures that's kind of that smooth, slippery part that kind of blends in with the spinal cord that's way deep down in our brains, and that's really the survival part of the brain, and it's always scanning the environment for threat. And when that part of the brain feels threatened, which it does a lot if you're like me, right? Kind of just going through the day, there are times that the threat kind of comes up.
Yeah.
Even if we don't call it that, if it just feels uncomfortable or anxious or worried or angry even, or depressed, it's usually because there's some sense of a threat. And then that part of the brain is really going to take over to try to get us to feel safe. And when that, or to get safe, not to feel safe, but to get safe. And when that happens, we really lose function in the cortical areas of our brain, which is where the cognitive therapies are at work. And so we're not really able to think clearly. Our brains are not functioning in concert, like all the parts of the brain are not working together at that time. The survival part of the brain really kicks into gear. That's why often people say, I know something, like I know that this person doesn't mean to make me feel this way, but I can't not feel this way, right? Mm-hmm. So cognitive therapies are going to say, well, just think about and just know that they don't mean it, right? Just tell yourself in that moment, they've had a bad day. I know they love me or whatever. But when you are in that threatened moment, your nervous system is feeling threatened. It's stress hormones are coursing through your body. And when that happens, it's almost like a switch flips in your brain that really turns off those thoughtful parts of your brain, and your body is mobilized for fight, flight, or freeze, or sometimes even immobilization, depending on the level of threat. So in those situations, and those situations are what our body does when our sense of secure attachment is threatened. If there's an interaction with one of our most important others in which we feel somehow the bond is threatened, we are really going to go into that mode. In fact, modern, brain scans, fMRIs, the functional magnetic resonant imaging of the brain, will show that our brains go into the same type of threat response in those moments as they do during some kind of threat to our physical safety, like a terrible car accident or falling off the edge of a cliff. So our body is not interested in our thoughtful parts of the brain working. They're just interested in us getting safe. Mm-hmm. So cognitive therapies really fail us around that, and they don't really help us heal at the neurological level to kind of move the parts that are feeling threatened out of that threatened state. And EFT is what we call a bottom-up approach. It's working from the nervous system and kind of clearing out the miss signals that we're getting from old information that are stored in that part of the brain, kind of clearing that out, restructuring at a neurological level how our brain, the deepest part of our brain, interprets certain events, and kind of restructures the bond from unsafe to safe. And then all the areas of the brain can work together, and then our thoughts change because our experiences have changed. We feel threatened because we've had experiences that teach that part of a brain that those experiences mean danger. So because they've learned that part of the brain has learned that through experience, EFT is structured in a way to give new, really profound experiences that hit that part of the brain at a way, or not hit, but work in that part of the brain, send it new signals of safety that rewire it from unsafe to safe. That's a major difference.
Mhm. Yes, it is. And I love that you talk about it as, working with people from the neurological level. I think it's so important to point that out because in my experience, I think sometimes, when I was using CBT, I think people were hearing, well, it's my fault. I'm the problem because I'm thinking wrong.
Yes.
My thoughts are bad. And that's not what people are trying to communicate with CBT, but I
No.
think that's the way it lands so often.
Yes.
And so the neurological explanation that you just gave is so important for people to understand because, your body, your brain, your nervous system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's trying to keep you safe,
Yes.
using all your past experiences to try to do that.
Yes. Yes. Well said.
Very good insight. And Rachel, toggling off what Christy had said, that was so good and profound. Like the way you described that, Christy, I never heard it described in that way. Like that, your nervous system is got memory of past unsafe situations. So no wonder in a couples model the person may look at you a certain way and you get triggered. So that bottom up, what's that emotion tied to that experience and making sense of that. That's so
Yeah. 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 Another major difference is cognitive therapies do not work with emotion at all. They work with the thought life, and EFT starts with the letter E, which is for emotion. And emotion is not only allowed in session and invited, but it's privileged and it's targeted.
Yeah, love that. It's normal. Right? I'm always surprised at the amount of people don't realize that it's normal and human to experience all emotions, right? Just because there's positive emotions and negative emotions, that's based on the way that they make us feel, right? It doesn't mean negative emotions are bad and we should never experience those.
No, it's absolutely part of the human experience. And in relationships, which are one of the most important things in our human existence, especially with our primary others, our most important others, whoever they may be. What is a deep human bond if it is not an emotional bond?
Right.
A bond that helps us to feel safe and that we are okay and that we're loved and that somebody's got our back. If that's not emotion, I don't know what it is.
Right. Yeah. You talked about safety earlier, which on the hierarchy of needs is like very first one. But I mean, after, you got safety, food and water, the next one up is love and belonging.
Exactly.
I tell people all the time, a need to feel love, belonging, and acceptance is only not important if you're homeless and starving.
Yes. Yeah.
And those will trump it. I mean, it's still important, but then those other needs will come first.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So
exactly
good.
Right.
Very good. Now, Christy, when you're working with your therapist or working with individuals, couples, what's the blocks that come up most frequently when working with emotion or attachment injuries?
Well, the most prominent emotion, so the emotion that when it shows up, it really takes precedence based on what I have just shared about our neurology and about survival, which Rachel just expanded on, is fear. So another thing that is really, it's not unique to EFT, but it is such a fundamental part of of being an EFT therapist and the experience for the clients with an EFT therapist is safety. And and now I'm forgetting what the question was. Repeat the question.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, you're doing a great job. Yeah, like, so the block
Oh, the blocks.
for
Yeah.
movement is typically fear. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Fear.
So movement requires taking new risks. As I said, our brains interpret things as safe or not safe based on experience. And it takes new experiences to change the brain's way of responding to similar experiences. And new experiences around something where we feel risk based on past experiences is scary, especially with my most important others, right? So if the way that I have protected myself when, for instance, my partner seems distant and uninterested or unreachable, if my way of trying to, fight for connection is to say, hey, you haven't talked to me all evening. Your computer is more important to you than me. What kind of man are you? Right? Like, if that's my way of protecting my heart and saying, hey, it's not that I'm not worthy of love, it's that something's wrong with you, and buck up, dude, right? If that's my way of protecting that tremendous fear that I am not as important as his computer, and I am not worth his time, and that I don't really matter, and I'm not important to him, which is unbearable.
Right. Yeah.
If the way that I manage that and try to draw him to me is to do it that way, it's going to be really hard for me when I get to the point in my therapy with my couples therapist and my beloved to take the risk to say, in those moments, I feel like I don't matter. And I get this tremendous sense of panic and fear that I'm really essentially unlovable. And that scares me to death. And that's why I come at you with arrows.
Yeah.
Which I know just drive you away, but my longing is for you to turn to me and to show me that I matter. Wow, what a risk is that, right? Because he doesn't know that. All he knows, maybe, and he's probably told me by this time in therapy, all he knows is that I am always at him, telling him all the ways he fails and that he's stupid because he loves a computer more than his wife, right? Yeah. So how is he going to respond? I have no idea. And if he rejects my vulnerable reach in that moment, I'm going to be obliterated.
Yeah.
So that's a good example of a block.
Yes, it was.
Good example. Yeah. It's too much for her to risk. I mean, if, her being vulnerable doesn't open any movement towards her, she's gonna feel obliterated, like you said. Just
yeah. And then she's going to have to double down on her old moves, right? To stay safe. But that's the beauty of EFT, is that the therapist is trained to help reduce the risk in those moments. The therapist is trained to help the speaking partner share from a safe enough level of vulnerability. It's going to be titrated up, right? We're not going to start with, hey, underneath that blaming kind of response is fear, so turn to your partner and tell him X, Y, and Z, right? We're going to work toward that. And once we get to that point, and so the EFT therapist is going to kind of modulate the level of risk. And people are going to be, our couples, our family members are going to be taking smaller risks at first. Like we would with, learning how to swim. We're not going to push somebody in the deep end and go, okay, this is how you swim. Here you go, give it a try, right? that's just going to create more panic and fear, and that person's not going to come toward the water again, right? We're going to, start with them walking around the water, looking at it, smelling the smell of the chlorine, dipping their toes in it, going up to their ankles, going up to their calves, etc. Right? And we do this as therapists with our clients. We take manageable risks toward new experiences, and we're constantly monitoring the level of safety that has been established in the relationship before we invite a speaking partner to take a risk. And then we help the listening partner hear it in new ways. This is not about you being a failure and not being enough and being stupid and loving your computer more than your wife. This is about how incredibly important you are to her, and how she longs to feel your love, and how when you're there for her in her moments of need, she is comforted like nobody else can comfort her. And she goes into a panic mode when she sees signals that aren't telling her. Your intention is not to tell her that she doesn't matter and that you're not there to her. You're just kind of taking a break and taking a breather, adjusting from the stressors of the day to being home, and you're not getting it. I mean, you didn't know this. You didn't know that you not paying attention to her when she walks through the door hit her like this, right? So we're helping the listening partner understand what this behavior is really about. It's not about you're a stupid guy and why the heck did I marry you in the first place? It's about how important you are to her and how panicky she gets when she feels like she's getting a signal that she really doesn't matter to the one who matters the most to her.
I love that. That's so good, isn't it, Rachel? Titrating. Okay, we're in this part of the pool and not just throwing them in the deep end. That's why I love this model. It gives me time, Christie, and I appreciate it, to go soft, slow, and people look at you, or our clients, they'll look at you kind of funny, like, why are you going so slow?
Yes.
I don't want to. Yeah.
Right. And we have to go slow, because if we clip along, we can't get to the part of the brain that's needing revision, right? We call it limbic revision. And that has to happen with the limbic system coming online. If we're moving quick, we're still at the level of the cortical areas of our brain, which is not where the injuries are.
That's so good. Yeah. Rachel, you have anything else you want to ask her? I know we're up on 39 minutes, just to let you guys know.
I love that it's slow. Once you get used to it, it's hard at first to get used to, like, oh my gosh, this is painfully slow process.
Yeah.
But it takes that for people to see what is really happening. What's really been happening this whole time that just was unseen and unsaid.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I call it the story, the real story.
Yeah.
To get to the real story, because all this stuff that happens up here out in the room, that's not the story, but that's all that we know if we can't slow it down and get to the heart of what's really going on and get to the real story. Yeah. Yeah. And in my experience, clients may be surprised at the pace, but often after the very first session, and I'm sure you guys experience this too, the family members and or the couple or the individual is walking out in a little bit of a daze, like, what just happened? Like, something different is happening here, right? Because the EFT therapist is using language from the real storyline. We're calling to it. We're calling to those deeper parts of self. And we're acknowledging the power and the beauty and the importance of the relationship and of each family member to the others. And that's a reframe that hits the heart of our clients. They feel heard, understood, and seen.
Absolutely. That's all everybody wants. In a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
What suggestions do you have for, people who are considering beginning couples therapy?
Just know that almost always there is one partner that is more resistant to the idea. It's very rare in my experience. I don't know about you ladies, but where both partners come in, ready to go. Usually there's one partner that's really saying we need to do this, and the other partner that's kind of, coming in because the other partner feels the need, right? And so I think it's really important for people to know that, because that can feel scary and discouraging. But it, until that, and I'm going to call them the reluctant partner, has the experience, of course they're going to be reluctant, right? I mean, it's scary, right? It's scary. And usually, anyway, so it's just scary, and they don't know what's going to happen. They don't, often the reluctant partner is thinking, I'm going to get drug in here so that I can get teamed up against and be told what I'm doing wrong and how I need to get fixed. And that is not going to be their experience when they walk in the door of an EFT session. They are going to be honored. They are going to be respected. Their experience is going to matter. And we are not going to sit back and just let what happens at home happen in our office. We're working with the relationship. The relationship is our client, not the one who made the phone call. And so if you have a reluctant partner, talk to them about it just being an experiment. Like, that this is really important to me. It would mean a lot to me for you to come with me. And maybe, let's just try it for 4 to 6 sessions. That may seem like a lot, but if you don't feel like something is really happening for you that feels important and good, and things aren't happening that are better for you in the relationship, okay. But let's give it a try, because in my experience, often in the first session, the reluctant partner is like the one at the front desk making the next appointments, which, the one who made the phone calls like, who are you? And, what did you do with my partner? But sometimes it does take, a few weeks. But usually it doesn't take very long for both partners to be very excited about having this opportunity and having these new experiences together, because it really builds hope. And it starts this new conversation at the level of the heart. Even if they can't do it at home for a while, they get to have these wonderful conversations in our room, and they're just wonderful, and they're so hopeful. And so anyway, just do it, right? Don't worry. And it's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. And it's hard to wait, because sometimes it feels like there's a really narrow window when your partner is going to say yes. And I get that. And sometimes that is true. But EFT therapy is not a therapy that people are going to leave and usually, sometimes it happens, but rarely are they going to leave and say, well, that didn't work, or that was a terrible experience, right? Usually they're going to want to have more. Often an EFT therapist is going to get people that have been through several different types of therapists.
Yeah.
And they're like, where were you? Where was EFT when we needed it 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Where was it, Christie? Where was it? I don't know.
It was in Chicago and Los Angeles and DC and
Canada.
Canada, right? But now it's in West Virginia and in the tri-state area.
That makes me feel grateful. Like finally moving in a positive direction with, forward thinking about, therapy models. And I'm just so grateful for the model, and grateful for you, Christie, and what Cabell Pastoral Care does for the community, the people that you see, and I'm just so grateful. And the people that you send our way. Rachel and I are very grateful.
Yes, thank you.
Well, we're excited to have more people, because we can't take everybody, and we don't have to take everybody anymore. When we're full now, we have more people, including the two of you that we trust, to send people to, because we know you're EFT trained, and that you share our passion, and the skill in this wonderful model. So thank you for what you do in the Teays Valley area. It's exciting to have you there. Thanks for partnering with us.
Thank you, Christie. Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, I was just saying, absolutely. It's a pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for, the ripple effect. I guess I wouldn't know EFT if you hadn't taught Linda. So
Isn't that cool?
thank you.
Now you go spread the word. You keep it going.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Christie, for joining us on our podcast today. We appreciate you, and this will be uploaded soon. And we appreciate you so much. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for the invitation. It was fun. I always love to talk about EFT. Hope this is helpful for your viewers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.